Are you just heading back to school after several years or maybe many years away? And the thing that feels really intimidating is having to find the time to sit down and write these really long papers. I know that that was a concern when I went back to school. How would I find the time to fit paper writing in with all my other responsibilities? So I developed a few quick habits to help me break down papers into small chunks so that I could tackle them piece by piece, section by section. And today I want to share with you how I get through papers and how I get past that hurdle of not wanting to start. Let's get into it. So, the first step I take, as silly as it may sound, is to format my document. And why this is so effective for getting started is because it doesn't require you to think through anything that you're going to need to write for the paper. It simply requires you to set it up. I use a template for this. So, I've created a blank paper with the title and the page numbers and everything set up correctly for the style that my school prefers, which is APA style. And so I duplicate that template and then I just update things like the professor name, the title of the document, the date, things like that. It only takes a few minutes, but it kind of gets me started and gets the ball rolling so that I can move into the next step. And again, the next step, it's not going to be challenging either because in this step, what I do is I look at the assignment and there's usually either a rubric or an outline or questions that need to be answered. And I copy and paste those into the document. This is sort of the early stage of thinking through how I'm going to respond. And so copying and pasting, it's a tiny little step, but it kind of gives the overall structure that I'm going to be trying to hit. And so, again, it's a small step, but it keeps you going inch by inch, little by little. Once you've done that, make a rough outline. This is where I start thinking through what I'm going to say in my paper. I add sections, especially if the rubric required certain sections. I'll add section headings. I'll add two or three topics that I want to talk about in that section. And I might even put in some of my initial thoughts about where I might be headed. This isn't writing a first draft. This is really getting a sense of what I'm going to be trying to say. And it's also helping me see where I need to do more research, the things that I'm going to need to pull in later. So, making an outline, it can take me a little while, but I really try and keep it light and flexible. So, again, it's another 5 or 10 minute task. I'm not getting the details, I'm really just getting it going. Next, I start adding any quotes or notes from my research. Now, this is a little bit more involved, but this is where I pull in things that I've already found, things from the source materials that were provided by the instructor, or things from studies that I've been reading, things like that, if I'm working on a research paper. And I'm just kind of putting them into place. I'm not trying to develop ideas about them, although if they pop up, I put those in there next to the quotes and notes, but I'm just trying to get them slotted into place. And this is a great review step because it'll help me see, am I missing some references for certain sections? Are there parts that I need to research further? Are there parts where my quotes aren't really supporting what I was thinking I would say? Or do I need to rethink what I was going to say? So, this is sort of a working with the materials that I have, but not yet creating the draft of the paper. That's the next step. So in the next step, I use speech to text most of the time. Sometimes I'll type, but usually I use speech to text to get that first draft down. If I'm on the go, I'll use an audio recorder. But if I'm just sitting at my computer, a lot of times I'll use speech to text right within Google Docs and I'll just start talking out all the things I'm going to say. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect at this stage. And because I know time is limited, sometimes I just work section by section. Sometimes I'll set a timer and I'll say, okay, for the next half hour, I'm going to talk through this first section of my paper. Again, doesn't need to be perfect, but just setting that goal and then taking a break or going and dealing with the other things that you need to in your life. Using this method, you really don't need to set aside large chunks. You can work on it in pieces and come back later. So I've got my first draft down now. I've used speech to text and it's rough, but it's taking shape. The next step is the writing process. Now, this is the most involved process, but again, I go page by page, section by section. My goal isn't to have everything done all at once. Most of the time, I'm writing and refining and revising in 15, 20, 30-minute chunks. And that's a great way to sustain motivation. If you don't think you can sit down and write a long section, write a paragraph. Set a goal of doing a paragraph or two paragraphs or a section or a page. You can do it by pages. So if you have a 5-page document you're working on, maybe do half a page and take a break. Break it down in a way that makes sense to you and works with your schedule. And that's it. At the end of this process, you'll have a completed paper. Now, you can take additional steps at that point. You can revise and proofread your document. Some people use tools to check their grammar. And then you also want to make sure that you're checking for citations being done correctly and whether you formatted correctly. And especially if you're going between systems, so from Google to Word, that kind of thing, you want to double check that the formatting carried over. But it doesn't need to be a big, arduous process. You can break this down, you can work on it when you have time, and you can fit it in around everything you have to do in the rest of your life. Please, please don't let writing papers be the thing that stops you from pursuing that degree. You can do this. I believe in you. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you'd like to learn my hacks for recording audio on the go, check out the video I put up in the corner there. Have a great day, and I'll see you later, midlife learners.